time is valuable in different ways. And I think also part of it is like from a young age, it feels like we have infinite amounts of time.
Mm-hmm.
But as you get older, as you see time fly, and just the access to future time is more unknown,
Mm-hmm.
the more valuable that time becomes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Fisher.
And I'm Dave Fisher. We're a husband and wife team of certified financial planners, and together we make up Team Fisher Financial. Welcome to our new series we're calling And Money.
As both a concept and an object, money is a prevalent component of our world and intersects with so many areas of our lives.
By the nature of our job as CFPs, our days are filled with constant conversations around money. Conversations we think are vital for people to consider and understand for their financial universe and beyond.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of And Money. My name is Lauren Fisher, and this is my husband, Dave Fisher. We are both certified financial planners, and I feel obligated to tell everybody, as a married couple, it has been 20 minutes since our last fight.
Maybe 25 now.
Maybe 25. And ironically enough, it was a argument about time.
Time.
And,
What a fun concept that
and
people argue about.
And respecting each other's time.
Yes.
And giving heads up when you're going to be late.
Maybe texting. It could be that simple.
Just picking up the phone.
Gentlemen, it can be that
Just
simple.
a quick, like, hey, running a little late.
I'm calling myself out. It was my fault on that one. But we live and learn and hopefully grow in wisdom through these experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time is valuable.
Time is valuable. And
respecting time is also very valuable. Maybe more so.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to cover today. All, of course, in the context of money. And to start there, a lot of people know the phrase time is money.
Yeah.
We equate the two.
Uh-huh.
But taking it a step further, people have also said time is money, but money doesn't buy time.
Right.
So how do we look at, just generally, how should we think about time as it relates to our money?
Well, it's clearly an unequal relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just said, you can actually buy time
or save
time, but you can't, like, money, you can do a lot of things with it, right? You can save it, you can spend it, you can invest it, you can give it away. Like, those are very valuable things, all of which we talk to all of our clients about. Very valuable. Time is something, I think you mentioned this, you can only spend it, right? Saving time is really just saying I'm allocating my time in a different way.
Yeah.
But you're not saving any time. The clock is still ticking.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how we use the same language where we talk about saving time. There's phrases about borrowed time.
True.
And buying time. So it's kind of funny, just in our vernacular and in our everyday language, we treat the two the same.
Right.
But
it's very unequal relationship.
Yes, since time, really, when you think about it, time can only be spent. You can't get it back. You can't save. You can't, stash it away for a rainy day. It's the clock is always ticking.
Yeah.
But how that relates to money is really important. Because it's such a limited resource.
Yeah.
And the hard part is there's a lot of unknowns with time as well. I mean, there's unknowns with money too, but there's unknowns with how much time people are going to have just in general in their life. And then there's one of the biggest questions that we always run into is the timing around retirement or a business exit or whatever that looks like. There tends to be always uncertainty around what time is going to look like. So let's jump in, just generally speaking, because I want to get to some practical stuff like the time value of money. And we're going to talk about a really easy example of that. But just in this context, there were a few things to kick off the conversation. I found there's this site called Empower. I actually hadn't heard of it. But they did a study in 2024 and they asked different people different generations, how much they thought their time was worth. And it was interesting. So overall, the average was people said an hour of their time was worth $240.
Okay. Fairly reasonable.
Boomers came in at the lowest. They said on average $137. Next was Gen X. They said $215. Then Gen Z said $266, $267-ish. And then millennials, we think our time is
Very
just
valuable.
super valuable. We said $329 that's an hour of our time. So
why do you think that is? I have my reasons, but why do you think it is?
I want to hear your reasons first.
So how I usually interpret this is like money over time loses value, and people kind of get stuck in a certain period of time. When they think back, they're like, oh, I remember X year, right? Or this series of years. And they reference like the money that's tied to it, like the inflationary dollar, the value of it at that time. So for older generations, it makes perfect sense that they're on the lower end.
Sure.
Because generally speaking, they're thinking about it as 20, 30 years ago when they were working, or 10 years ago, however long, a long time, when they were working and how much they made while they were working.
Right.
Well, inflation has changed even in the last 5 years. So that number has gone up, but their perception of it hasn't changed. However,
right, but like Gen Z
is coming into the workforce, or they're taking on the lower end jobs. They're just starting their careers, or maybe they're jumping into the restaurant business, being servers, and they're not paid as much right now. They don't understand their worth. Millennials have been in the workforce now for, at least, I think on the lower end, 5-10 years, on the upper end, 20 years. So they understand their worth in the marketplace, and they're like, let's ratchet this thing up.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely worth this $328.
Yeah. Okay, because I think some boomers and Gen X people out there would be like, it's because millennials are just
those dang millennials.
You're so full of yourself. Look at you, think your hour's worth so much more than everybody else. But I think that's actually a really good point. That's a very level-headed and measured.
Oh, thank you. You called me level-headed. That's very kind.
Way to think about it. Yeah, I actually I think that's a really good point, because I looked at this and kind of thought like, guys, millennials, I mean, like, I know we're awesome, but come on, we're not like
bring it down a notch. We're also very proud of what we accomplish.
We are very proud.
Yes,
and I think also in like this post-COVID world where we dealt with higher levels of inflation, and back to what you said about just like what a dollar was worth in our prime earning years, versus those older generations and versus Gen Z who's just coming into it. That's really good.
I came up with that on the spot.
Good job. Good job. And with that, I think it's interesting that the lowest boomers would say an hour of their time is worth $137.
Yeah.
And yet what we hear time and again from clients, from friends, from family is regret around how they chose to spend
it
and save, really not save,
right,
earlier on. So in the same study that they did in 2024, they said that 43% of people wish they could have gone back in time and started saving sooner. 48%, this was interesting, 48% said they would rather have a longer retirement period with less money than retire later in life with more. Which is interesting.
Okay.
So basically saying I would, and this is theoretical. I think sometimes people have this mindset that like in retirement they're not going to spend as much.
It depends on the person.
Well,
right?
Kind of though, but I think some people think there's just this like switch that's going to flip when they're not working anymore, that all of a sudden their spending habits are just going to magically change.
Right. True.
That doesn't.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
It's usually within like a certain range.
Right. But in terms of like thought process, mentally, people said they would be willing to take maybe a lower, level of, I don't know, level of income
Yeah.
to have a longer time in retirement.
Which actually makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk to people, there have been multiple studies of people on their deathbeds.
Yes.
Nobody's saying, I wish I worked more or made more money.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I wish I spent more time with my kids and with my wife, or anything else that's more relational.
Yeah.
That's what they're thinking about. Those are the things that actually matter.
Yeah.
The work is obviously important.
Yeah.
We're all supposed to work in some form or fashion, but we don't want that to dictate our relationships at the end of the day.
I think the hard part though with that is that sometimes people take and twist that a little bit when they say like, well, people never say they wish they worked more or they wish they like had more money. You're like, yeah, you're right, from like an esoteric what matters in life situation. Sure. But everyone is going to get to a point in their life, if they're lucky enough to live long enough, that their working years will be behind them. And you have to answer the question, no matter how much you don't want to answer it now, of how am I going to live my lifestyle, maintain my lifestyle, or do more. A lot of people say they want to travel in retirement. That's a big one for people. How are you going to pay for that?
Right.
And so people, I think, try to disassociate the saving aspect and the time aspect of money. And we'll go back to like, well, but nobody ever says they want to work more. And like, yeah, but a ton of people say they wish they saved more.
Yeah. Time is valuable in different ways. And I think also part of it is like, from a young age, it feels like we have infinite amounts of time. But as you get older, as you see time fly, and just the access to future time is more unknown, the more valuable that time becomes.
Yeah.
So even though I would say boomers on here say their value's less, I think ultimately they don't put dollars as much on their time. Like, it's not as valuable in terms of a dollar amount, but it is valuable more so than a dollar, because they know their time is more limited compared to what it was before.
Yeah. Yeah. And more often than not, the people who say, the 43% who wish they could go back in time to start saving sooner, the older people get, the more likely they are to say that. Like, I wish we had that broken out by generation, because I feel like it would mostly be boomers and Gen X saying that, and probably some millennials, which brings us to kind of our more practical piece, which is time value of money. That is a foundational financial concept. I think probably most people have heard that, but it's not something that I think a lot of people like have really digested and in a meaningful, practical way really understand, and what it means for how they make their decisions. And I think there's a really simple version of how you can kind of understand time value of money, and it's the rule of 72. It's one of the first things that my parents taught me when they were teaching me about investing growing up. And basically it tells you to take the number 72, divide it by whatever percent return you're looking at. And it's usually best in like the 6 to 10% range. And that'll tell you how long it's going to take you to double your money. So let's say,
nice.
So let's say you want to do annualized 6% return. Pretty conservative. So you do 72 divided by 6.
Oh man.
You know that. Don't act like you don't know that.
It would 12.
Take it. Good job.
Whew, that was close. I didn't know I'd have to do math.
Your third grade teacher would be so proud.
My mom. Thanks, Mom.
So 72 divided by 12, or 72 divided by 6 is 12. So it would take about 12 years at a 6% rate of return to double your money. Or let's say, okay, I actually think the market's going to do 10%.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Okay, so 72
it's been there for the past 10 years.
72 divided by 10, 7.2. So you're looking at, it would take you 7 years to double your money. So that's just in terms of like, helps you kind of think through interest rates and time and how different rates of return are obviously going to grow your money at different rates. But I think if we look at it more granular, there's looked up, I think the US, do I have it written down? Yes. So the median age in the US today is 38.9, almost 40.
I'm almost median.
You're almost median. Woo, good job. But the median age in Texas, we're in Austin, Texas, shout out, is about 35, 36. So
oh, hey, I'm right there.
Me too. So we'll start there because we're Texan and we're annoyingly proud of it. So yes. So, and just looking at something simple, like doing an IRA contribution, the max this year that you can do is 7,000, which is about what, 580-ish a month?
583 or 580, I forget.
But let's say, just to keep it simple, you know, a lot of people are like, I don't know if I can do 580 a month. So let's say 250.
Okay.
So at $250 a month, as an easy number, you can make an assumption that you can save $250 from age 35 to age 65. So it's 30 years of savings.
So like your normal working years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just you're saving $250 a month. And using a really conservative 6% rate of return. I think the S&P 500 has returned like 11% year over year over the last 30 years, but inflation adjusted, it's like 6.5%.
Okay.
So let's say 6.
Yeah. Well, and we also don't know what future returns are going to look like. It's probably going to be less than what we've experienced.
Exactly. Yeah. And we always plan conservatively. So that would be $90,000 contributed over that time frame.
30 years.
You would have a final value of a little over $250,000.
Hey, good on that person.
Yeah.
Way to go. That's $250 a month.
$250 a month.
$250,000
starting
30 years later.
Starting at age 35.
Okay.
Now, let's say you wait until you're 40.
Ooh.
5 years.
Okay.
You wait 5 years.
That's it.
Same assumptions.
Yeah.
You're putting in $75,000. At the end of that time, you've got $173,000-ish.
You're off by what, $77,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
By waiting 5 years.
Okay.
So let's go the other way. Start at 30.
Okay, that's pretty reasonable. People feel like they got their careers going. Now we can start investing more.
That's a little over $100,000 contributed.
Okay.
That plus the growth, you're looking at $356,000. So you're at $100,000 more. Yeah.
Holy cow.
So then think through like the power of compounding and the number of people we know in their late 30s, 40s, 50s who say they wish that they understood the power of compounding when they were 18.
Yeah.
When they had left their parents' house. So let's say you did that at 18.
Oh.
Same $250, 6% return.
We got a saver on our hands.
But you're doing that for 40 plus years. That's a contribution of just over $140,000.
Okay.
But at the end, at age 65, you've got almost $783,000.
3 times from 35 to 65.
Now,
holy cow.
There's something to key into that we have talked about a lot with our business owner clients. There is a strategy, and there's some nuance to it. There's complexity. There always is. But for business owners, in the code, it allows for business owners to hire their kids from ages 7 to 22 to do meaningful work in their business.
So not just sitting around.
Yeah. But I mean, when I was 7 working for my dad, I was cleaning his office.
Oh yeah, he wouldn't let you get away with that.
I was cleaning his office. I was sweeping the floors.
Yeah.
You know, I was doing very basic stuff for a 7-year-old, but that was necessary.
Yeah.
That was helpful to his business.
Absolutely.
And so you can do that from 7 all the way to 22. If you, for your kid, started at age 7, and again, didn't even do the full 7,000 a year, did $250 a month, and did this from ages 7 to 22.
Oh, so just
and that would be $45,000. Yeah,
roughly.
Through college, basically. Yeah. And they're doing work. You have an employment agreement. You have timesheets.
From sweeping to QuickBooks, right?
That's what I did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you did that and then stopped at 22, and it's in an IRA, you contributed $45,000. If you just let that grow, until they're 65.
So they've only done 45,000.
They've done
not like the
45,000,
100
right?
and all the other ones.
Final value. And remember, if you started at age 18 and did that through age 65, you would have just over $780,000. If you started at age 7 for your kid, did it through age 22 and let it grow, didn't put another cent more in at a 6% rate of return, the value of that account at age 65 would be over $890,000.
Holy cow. And they didn't contribute a cent after 22.
And that's a strategy. Number one, it is a tax planning strategy because you are paying your kids out of the business. That's income reduction off of your top line revenue. So that's less you're paying in taxes.
Yeah.
It's also an estate planning technique.
Oh, interesting.
Why are you acting like you don't know this?
I love it. No, estate planning. Like, Tell me more.
You know everything I'm saying.
It's like one of those infomercials. They pull out this product. You're like, no way.
So like, what?
No, tell me about the estate planning.
I want you to talk about the estate planning.
So the estate planning feature for clients that are well above the estate tax threshold. So, which is getting higher. What was the new proposal? Up to 15 million as part of the new Tax Cuts and Jobs Act?
Yes.
And that would go with inflation. So for a married couple, $30 million. So over $30 million doesn't fit a lot of the normal, population. But anybody above that threshold, what you're doing is you're shifting your estate, like what you would have been earning off of it and paying taxes on already and putting into a brokerage account or different vehicles to grow. You're actually moving it out of your estate and into your kids' estate to grow. And it's effectively a way to play that estate tax game of moving it from yours and reducing your taxable income at that time to your children's.
Yeah.
It's super effective. And I've actually seen grandparents that own businesses do that for their grandchildren as well.
Yeah.
They're starting to shift their income from themselves and even from their kids down to their grandkids. What an effective strategy.
Yeah. And the other piece, and it's more of a qualitative piece, but especially when we talk to business owners with kids of all ages, really, or high net worth clients, one of their main concerns is, how do I pass along the wisdom of hard work, of getting my kid to understand like the value of a dollar? Because a lot of times, I think that the statistic is still true that most self-made millionaires are first generation. So you're talking about people who did not grow up in a lot of the privilege of, parents who have money. And then their kids do. And so that's a big disconnect for people. And so there's a question of a lot of things that they learned as kids or that they learned having to struggle a little bit as they grew up. Or not even struggle, just like not have access to things
anything they wanted.
Right, exactly. And so these can be really fruitful, really helpful conversations and contexts. It was for me. I'm talking firsthand experience of working in my dad's business and seeing there was so much I saw that I was never going to be taught in a classroom or through a college degree about just the challenges of running a business, the difficult decisions around personnel and growth and marketing and all of these things. And on top of that, my parents were having intentional, proactive conversations with me about the money that I was making.
Yeah. Remember the spoon. Yep.
Spoon is never just a spoon. If you don't remember that one we talked about in our Conversations in Money episode about, a business lesson I learned about business expenses through a spoon. So all of that to say, it can be a tax strategy. It can be an estate and legacy planning strategy. It can also be, and it doesn't happen just organically. It's not going to happen magically. It takes intent, it takes proactivity. But if there is a direct line between, hey, I'm paying you to do work, we're putting it in this account, let's talk about the time value of money. Let's talk about the rule of 72.
Let's talk about what you can do with money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It starts to help even just create vulnerability and transparency around those conversations and normalizing that in your family, which for a lot of people was not normal growing up, where like people didn't talk about money. And a lot of times people are just left to kind of guess, because it's still, even in families, we've talked about this before, it's still considered like taboo and weird.
Especially like upper generation talking to their kids about the inheritance that they're going to be receiving.
Yeah.
Like it's very abnormal for them to have those conversations earlier on when they should have had them. And now we have to come back and like do quick repair effectively, or skew together a family governance model so that everybody's on the same page for the values of this family.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely important for high net worth individuals. And in fact, many times they're like, yeah, we can get the estate planning stuff done. Let's get the tax stuff done. We get all the right people in place. But they are even more concerned with the values being passed on to future generations. And that's a key aspect that I think a lot of people forget about. They're like, okay, I accumulated all this money, or I sold my business. I'm here. I made it. Now what? Now it's like, okay, I don't want to screw up my kids or my grandkids. And some people, because of that, they're like, I'm spending every dollar, and they're going to have to figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
And that's their method. And that's okay. Everybody's different. Other people are like, I want to shepherd this and grow this effectively, but I need to put constraints in place so that they know what this money is actually used for. And many times it's charitably inclined individuals that set this up so that there's a pattern of like giving away money is probably the biggest key for them as a family, and how they effectively do that.
Yeah.
So overall, there are so many lessons that can be learned by a young person putting money to work. They can spend it, they can save it, they can invest it, and they can give it away. And having those buckets lined up so that they know exactly what to do with their money, it sets them up for success later on and gives them the values that they can then pass on to their kids.
Yeah. And it's something that you can help them learn from. These people who say, I wish I knew when I was 18 about the power of compounding. One of my questions to them is like, okay, have you had conversations with your kids about that?
It's funny because back to 18, I was one of my first big boy jobs, right?
Big boy jobs.
I worked for a custom home builder in San Antonio. We were working on these beautiful mansions in the Dominion, which is like the premier neighborhood in San Antonio.
Yeah, where like the Spurs players lives, and like George Strait, right? Doesn't George Strait live
well,
there?
I think he sold, or he was trying to sell, but yes, he lived there. So this is like the preeminent neighborhood in San Antonio, and we're building this ginormous mansion and a casita on top of the hill. And I remember vividly one day we stroll in. It's me and my friend Jesse. We stroll in at 7:30 in the morning, and he's like, "Let me go find Jim, the owner of this firm, very successful, does great stuff. Let me go find Jim, see what we're doing today." We did specialty work with ceilings, we did beams, like it was pretty cool stuff. So he goes out, and in terms of time, and equating that to money, Jesse goes out to find Jim. Jim strolls by the garage. I'm just waiting for Jesse to come back and sitting down on my butt in the garage. And he walks by, and then he steps backward and glances over at me and is like, "Am I paying you right now?" I was like, "Yes, sir."
Oh, you're on the clock.
Yes, I was. I mean, once I get to the site, I'm on the clock.
Yeah.
But he's like, "Am I paying you to sit on your butt right now?" I was like, "Yes, sir. We're actually trying to find you." And he's like, "How about you go pick up some trash around the house while I think of something fun for you to do?" Well, fun is not fun, actually, if you didn't get the reference. But there's all this rock that they were putting up on the casita up the hill, and they were starting to toss these like larger pieces of rock. And he says, "You see those 3 pallets? I want to see those full of the excess good rock that it's not going to waste." This is in the middle of summer in San Antonio, 105-degree heat. And for 2 days straight, I pick up like what I would consider a good piece of rock and stack it onto this pallet. And I have never worked so hard in my life. It was in that moment first I realized the value of my time and his time because
Mm-hmm.
it equated to money,
Mm-hmm.
right? And secondly, that I didn't want to be in that line of work later on. And it was important to get a college degree for me specifically.
Yes.
So it was a very meaningful and impactful moment in my life when I realized early on how valuable time is.
Yes.
And that I shouldn't spend my time sitting around.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's always something I can do that's valuable and provide meaning for myself, for others, even just giving it away in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Jim, for that very important lesson that I learned early on.
I know you haven't really kept in touch with him, but I wonder if he remembers that
I
moment.
told him once before.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And he was like, oh, that's great. I love that.
He probably didn't remember, but he was like, good job,
yep,
me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's how that conversation went.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And that's why, even though we're talking about time in the context of money, it's so important to understand like how finite it is in every situation. So wrapping up, other than just for people to understand, as we talked about the time value of money.
Yeah.
It's one of the most challenging things as an advisor, in my opinion, is when we are putting together a plan and we know part of that plan is you need to start saving more.
Yeah.
We know that's going to be a harder conversation because usually what that means is you have to spend less in order to save more.
Lifestyle change.
Yeah. Sometimes it's minor. There have been times where we have to run the numbers and say like, you will outlive your money.
Yes.
If you don't start making these changes now. And you're 30, 40 years old, you need to start taking care of 70-year-old you.
Yes.
80-year-old you.
Yeah.
Potentially 90-year-old you.
Didn't they do that study where they showed a version of themselves that was, I think it was 70 or 80 years old, and it helped them better save and invest because they could actually picture themselves, because most people can't actually visualize their future self.
I have not heard it.
But actually putting a face in front of you.
So like what, did they take a picture and then just
they did
like
that
made
aging app thing, and they said this is you, and it made them more susceptible, and it's easier for them to be like, I'm fine not spending on this now for myself. I'm fine investing this for my future self. It became a lot easier for them to do that.
That makes sense. In terms of investing, $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. And it's worth even more than $1 the next day.
Right.
Because its value is corroding, diminishing unless you have a plan to put it to work. And so that's what we want people to think about, is the time value of money is important for your future self.
Yeah.
And so I think that can also, if it's hard, if you're married, if it's hard to think through like, I'm doing this for future me.
Yeah.
Okay, think about, I'm doing it for my future spouse. Like, think of your sweet spouse all wrinkly and like
old, bald, still.
I want
wrinkly.
Like I want to honor that, and I want us to be set up for success. So it may be like, I don't care, like, yeah, save for my future self, like, but really I'm also saving for and for your kids.
Yeah, your kids, your grandkids, like however you want to do that. The inheritance factor definitely plays into this.
And also the health and care factor.
Yeah.
You know, what are you doing now to make sure you are setting your kids up for success in terms of it's not only an emotional burden, but it can be a financial burden.
Yeah.
Walking with a parent through end of life.
Exactly.
And so there are all of these things to think about, and they're not easy all the time to think about, but they are so important because time is finite. It can only be spent. And so we have this tool of money to be able to take advantage of time in a positive way to set our future selves up for success.
Yeah. And hopefully give back some of that time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it's time and money.
I thought you were going to say it's time to say goodbye.
I was going to say something like that. Well, now you did. So it is time for us to say goodbye.
Join us next time. I actually don't know what's planned. I know in 2 weeks.
Surprise.
Yeah, surprise for next week. In 2 weeks, we are celebrating our 13-year anniversary.
Ooh.
And so we're going to talk about
dozen.
Yes. Yeah. And we're going to talk about us and money. So surprise episode because I can't remember what I put on the schedule. And then us and money.
Yeah.
So we'll see you next time.